The cargo ship's warning sirens pierced through the silence of space. Tom gripped his pilot's chair as the vessel shuddered violently around him. Red lights flashed across the cockpit displays, warning of multiple system failures. Through the viewscreen, he watched helplessly as the strange blue planet grew larger. "Computer, status report," he shouted, fingers flying across the controls. "Engine failure. Hull breach detected. Impact with planetary surface in approximately 4 minutes," the emotionless voice responded. Tom knew he had only moments to act. This was supposed to be a routine cargo run to the outer colonies. Now he faced a pilot's worst nightmare. He activated the emergency beacon and prepared the escape pod. Just as he was about to eject, his sensors picked up another falling object entering the atmosphere. Another ship, but definitely not human-made. Its design was organic, almost like a giant insect. It too was tumbling out of control, trailing smoke and debris. The computer's voice cut through his observations. "Impact imminent. Escape pod procedures advised." Tom didn't need to be told twice. He pulled the emergency release, and his escape pod shot away from the dying cargo ship. The pod's heat shields glowed as it tore through the atmosphere. Through the small window, he caught glimpses of an ocean world below. Endless blue waters dotted with just a few rocky outcrops. The pod's parachutes deployed with a sharp jerk, but the alien winds battered him mercilessly. Tom watched as his cargo ship plunged into the ocean several kilometers away, creating a massive splash. The alien ship he'd spotted was nowhere to be seen. His pod slammed into one of the rocky outcrops, the impact knocking him against the restraints. When everything stopped spinning, Tom ran a quick check of his supplies. Emergency rations, a basic medkit, some tools, and a damaged universal translator. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The air outside was thin but breathable. Tom stepped out onto the rocks, his boots crunching on the rough surface. The sky above was a strange shade of purple, and 3 small moons hung on the horizon. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, its waters an unnaturally dark blue. A movement caught his eye on a nearby rock formation. Something was climbing up the sheer cliff face with incredible speed. Tom's hand moved to his emergency pistol, but he didn't draw it. The figure that pulled itself up was unlike anything he'd seen before. It stood roughly his height, but had an exoskeleton that shimmered with iridescent blue patterns. Its 4 arms ended in delicate fingers, and 2 antennae twitched as it regarded him. This had to be the pilot from the other ship. They stared at each other for a long moment. The alien held no weapons, but Tom noticed it carried some sort of equipment pack. Neither made any aggressive moves. A splash in the waters below broke their standoff. Something massive moved beneath the surface, something with multiple fins and a shape that sent chills down Tom's spine. Both he and the alien stepped back from the edge instinctively. The alien reached slowly into its pack and pulled out a damaged device similar to Tom's translator. It spoke, and the device crackled with partial translations. "Danger, water, need help." Tom nodded slowly. Whatever their differences, they faced the same threat now. "We need to work together," he said clearly, hoping the alien's translator could pick up enough to understand. The creature's antennae bobbed in what seemed like agreement. Their ships were gone. The waters below held unknown dangers, and the rocky outcrop offered little shelter. But at least they weren't alone. The alien's translator sparked and fizzled as it tried to form words. Blue, as Tom had started calling them due to their shimmering color, worked methodically to repair the device using tools that looked more grown than manufactured. Tom watched in fascination as Blue's 4 hands moved with precise coordination. "Can you understand me?" Tom spoke slowly, holding up his own damaged translator. Blue's antennae twitched, and they made a series of clicking sounds that the translator partially caught. "Yes, partial. Communication possible." Tom sat down on a flat rock and pulled out his emergency rations. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across their rocky refuge. He broke a protein bar in half and offered it to Blue. The alien studied it carefully, their compound eyes reflecting the dying light. Not compatible. Different biology. Blue's translator crackled. They reached into their own pack and pulled out something that looked like crystallized honey. Tom nodded in understanding. They couldn't share food, but the gesture of offering meant something to both species. As darkness fell, the water around their rocky outcrop came alive with bioluminescent creatures. Some were beautiful, trailing strings of light as they swam near the surface. Others were terrifying, massive shapes that moved with predatory purpose in the depths. Blue proved to be an excellent climber, scaling the sheer rock faces with ease to scout their surroundings. Their compound eyes could see much better in the dark than Tom's human vision. From the highest point, Blue spotted something in the distance, a geometric shape too regular to be natural. Using a combination of gestures and broken translations, they shared their stories. Blue was a diplomatic envoy, traveling to a human station when their ship malfunctioned. Tom explained his cargo run with simple hand movements. Both agreed their ships were beyond recovery, lost to the depths of this alien ocean. They worked together to improve their shelter, using Blue's natural ability to spin silk-like fibers to create a waterproof covering. Tom's knowledge of knots and structural engineering helped them secure it against the strong winds. When acid rain began to fall, they were grateful for the protection. Human adaptability. Impressive. Blue's translator managed to convey. Tom smiled and demonstrated how he'd rigged a system to collect and filter the rainwater, making it safe to drink. Blue showed equal ingenuity, using their silk to create a warning system of threads that would vibrate if anything large approached their refuge. As their second night approached, they had established a functional camp and basic communication. Tom used a piece of debris to sketch a map of their surroundings, marking the distant structure Blue had spotted. It was their best hope for rescue, but reaching it meant crossing kilometers of hostile water. Blue pointed to the deadly sea and made a series of complex gestures. The translator caught fragments. Tomorrow. Build. Float. Tom understood. They needed to build a raft. Between his engineering skills and Blue's natural materials, they might have a chance. Looking out over the darkening waters, Tom realized that their survival depended on each other. Human and alien, stranded together on this deadly world, they had become something unprecedented. A team. Dawn brought calmer waters and a grim task ahead. Tom and Blue surveyed the wreckage from their pods, scattered across the rocky outcrop. Between Tom's cargo container fragments and Blue's organic ship components, they had enough materials to attempt building a raft. Blue's silk proved invaluable, stronger than any rope Tom had used before. They wove it into a complex pattern, binding together the lightweight alien metals and sealed cargo containers. Tom's knowledge of water vessels helped them design a stable platform with a small shelter in the center. Water creatures, dangerous. Blue's translator warned as they worked. Tom nodded, having seen the shadows moving below the surface. They reinforced the bottom of the raft with metal plates, hoping it would discourage anything thinking of attacking from beneath. As the sun reached its peak, they launched their creation. The raft bobbed gently on the waves, its hybrid design a testament to their combined ingenuity. Tom used a makeshift pole to guide them away from the rocks, while Blue kept watch with their superior vision. The first attack came within an hour. A serpentine creature, long as their raft and covered in bioluminescent spots, rose from the depths. Its jaws opened to reveal rows of crystalline teeth. Blue reacted instantly, shooting a spray of sticky silk into its eyes. Tom seized the moment to push them away with the pole, his muscles straining. More coming. Blue clicked urgently. The translator wasn't needed. Tom could see the shadows circling beneath them. The creatures hunted in packs, like wolves of the sea. They bumped the raft, testing its strength. Tom had an idea. He grabbed their water filter and poured the collected acid rain into the sea around them. The predators recoiled from the chemical change, creating a temporary safe zone. Blue understood immediately and began producing a special silk that would dissolve in water, creating a similar deterrent effect. They worked together seamlessly now, their different abilities complementing each other perfectly. When the winds picked up, Blue anchored them with silk lines while Tom steered. When strange flying creatures showed interest in their raft, Tom's aim with improvised projectiles kept them at bay while Blue reinforced their shelter. As the alien sun began to set, they spotted another rocky outcrop ahead. The structure they sought was still days away, but they had survived their first day at sea. Blue produced some kind of luminescent substance that provided light without attracting predators, while Tom secured their raft for the night. Humans, resourceful, Blue commented through the translator. Together, survive better. Tom smiled, checking their water supplies. Your silk saved us today. We make a good team. The night waters glowed with predatory lights around them, but their combined ingenuity had kept them alive. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they faced them as equals now, stranded survivors working together against a hostile world. The purple clouds gathered above them with frightening speed. Tom recognized the signs of an approaching storm, but this was unlike anything he'd seen before. The clouds had an oily sheen that made his skin crawl. Toxic rain coming. Blue's translator crackled with urgency. Must cover. Protect. Corrosive. Their antennae were twitching rapidly, sensing changes in the air that Tom's human senses couldn't detect. They rushed to reinforce their shelter, Blue spinning extra layers of waterproof silk while Tom secured their supplies. The first drops hit the water around them with an ominous hiss. Where the rain touched the ocean, it created strange chemical reactions, making the water bubble and steam. Using their combined knowledge, they created a multi-layer protection system. Blue's silk formed the outer layer, its special properties repelling the worst of the acid. Tom's cargo container materials provided rigid support underneath, while his filtered ventilation system kept them breathing safely. Inside their makeshift shelter, Tom watched in fascination as Blue used their lower arms to work on a strange crystalline device. On Homeworld, similar storms, the translator managed. Learn young, how survive. The toxic rain hammered their shelter for hours. The sound was deafening, but their protection held. Tom used the time to study the weather patterns, noting how the storm moved and behaved. If they could predict these events, it would help their journey. Through the translucent silk walls, they saw dark shapes moving in the agitated waters. The toxic rain was driving deep-sea creatures to the surface, things that should have stayed in the depths. One massive form rushed against their raft, nearly as long as a transport ship. Blue's silk anchors strained but held firm. Your world must be interesting, Tom commented, trying to distract them both from the horrors outside. Blue's translator took a moment to process his words. Yes, many dangers make us strong, came the reply. Humans also adapt well, survive much. Together, they worked out a system to collect and filter the rain. Despite its toxic nature, Blue recognized certain chemical components that, once processed, could be useful. Tom's experience with filtration systems helped them create a safe collection method. As the storm finally passed, they emerged to find their raft surrounded by floating creatures, killed by the toxic rain. The ocean had changed color, now a deeper, more ominous blue. But they had survived and learned something valuable. On this deadly world, even the rain could become a resource if you were clever enough. Their shelter, a combination of alien silk and human engineering, had proven stronger than either of them could have built alone. As they began repairing the minor damage from the storm, both realized that their differences weren't weaknesses. They were the key to their survival. Through the crystal-clear waters below, Tom spotted something that made him hold his breath. Beneath their raft, barely visible in the alien ocean's depths, stood the ruins of what was clearly a city. Spires of strange metal and stone reached up from the seafloor like grasping fingers, their surfaces covered in swirling patterns. Look, he pointed, showing Blue the discovery. The alien moved to the raft's edge, their compound eyes better suited to piercing the watery depths. The translator crackled as Blue spoke. Ancient. City. Must explore. They needed supplies, and the sunken ruins might hold something useful. More importantly, they needed to understand what had happened here. Why was an entire city underwater? Tom brought out their remaining equipment while Blue prepared special waterproof silk lines to serve as safety ropes. The water's pressure posed different challenges for each of them. Tom could dive deeper than Blue but couldn't stay under as long. Meanwhile, Blue's exoskeleton made them more vulnerable to pressure, but their multiple arms made them excellent at grabbing and carrying items. They worked out a system. Tom would dive first to scout. Then Blue would follow with collection bags made of their silk. Tom's first dive revealed the alien nature of the city. The buildings weren't designed for land dwellers at all. They had openings in strange places and corridors that spiraled in 3 dimensions. As he swam through what looked like a public square, he noticed something odd about the structure's surfaces. They were covered in a film that seemed to repel the water around it. Blue descended beside him, their antennae waving in the current. Together, they explored a building that might have been some kind of research facility. Inside, they found tools and devices unlike anything either species had seen before. Most remarkable was a wall covered in markings that both their translators partially recognized. Numbers, equations, warnings. Swimming back to the surface, they pieced together the story. This civilization had known their world was changing. The equations on the wall tracked rising water levels, changing atmospheric conditions. They hadn't died out. They had left, abandoning their city to the rising seas. Between dives, they salvaged what they could. Blue found materials that could strengthen their raft's hull. Tom discovered preserved documents that, while mostly unreadable, contained maps of the region. Most valuable was an ancient weather monitoring device, still functioning after ages underwater, that could help them predict the deadly storms. As the alien sun began to set, they secured their findings and prepared to move on. The city had given them tools and knowledge, but it had also given them a warning. This world had claimed one civilization already. They were determined not to become its next victims. That night, as bioluminescent creatures danced around their raft, Tom and Blue studied their new maps together. The structure they sought was marked on them, clearly built by the same vanished civilization. Whatever it was, the ancient people had considered it important enough to build it to last above the rising waters. They had survived another day, their unlikely partnership growing stronger. Human ingenuity and alien adaptability had gotten them this far. Tomorrow would bring them closer to their goal, armed with new knowledge from a civilization that had faced the same deadly waters before them. The sky turned an angry shade of deep purple as massive storm clouds gathered overhead. Tom checked their makeshift weather tracker salvaged from the sunken city. The readings were off the charts. This wasn't like the toxic rain they'd survived before. This was something far worse. Megastorm. Blue's translator sparked with urgency. Wave size. Dangerous. Must prepare. Their antennae were vibrating frantically, sensing atmospheric changes that Tom's instruments hadn't even detected yet. They worked frantically to secure their raft. Blue spun extra-strength silk lines, creating a complex web of safety harnesses and anchor points. Tom reinforced their shelter, using techniques he'd learned from studying the sunken city's architecture. They could see the wave coming, a wall of water that seemed to touch the clouds. The first impact nearly destroyed everything. Water crashed over them with incredible force, but Blue's silk lines held. Tom grabbed their alien companion as both were nearly swept away, his muscles straining against the surge. Blue's multiple arms grabbed the guide ropes, stabilizing them both. Lightning cracked across the sky, but it wasn't like Earth lightning. These bolts were green and seemed to follow the waves, creating deadly lattices of energy across the water's surface. Their raft's salvaged coating, based on the sunken city's technology, protected them from the worst of it. Through the storm's fury, they spotted something massive rising from the depths. A creature bigger than any they'd seen before, with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the lightning. It rose beneath their raft, but instead of attacking, it seemed to be helping them. The creature's massive body blocked the worst of the waves. Ancient Guardian. Blue clicked excitedly, their translator barely audible over the storm. City Protectors. Still exist. The storm raged for hours. Tom and Blue worked in perfect sync, adjusting their defenses as each new threat emerged. When acid rain began to fall, they quickly shifted their protective layers. When wind threatened to tear their shelter apart, they redistributed the silk webbing to disperse the force. As suddenly as it began, the storm passed. Their raft was battered but intact, thanks to their combined efforts. The great creature that had helped them sank slowly back into the depths, its lights fading into darkness. They had survived the unsurvivable, their different abilities and knowledge combining to overcome the planet's worst fury. Looking through their salvaged equipment, they realized the storm had actually pushed them closer to their destination. The mysterious structure was now visible on the horizon, a tall spire reaching into the alien sky. They were nearly there, their unlikely partnership having carried them through challenges neither could have faced alone. That night, as they repaired their raft under the light of 3 moons, both realized something had changed. They were no longer just 2 stranded survivors working together out of necessity. They had become a team, their differences making them stronger together than either could be alone. The spire loomed before them, its surface gleaming with the same strange metal they'd found in the sunken city. After days of battling deadly waters, toxic storms, and ancient creatures, they had finally reached their destination. Tom and Blue secured their raft to the structure's base, both exhausted but alert. Design matches. City architecture. Blue's translator spoke as they examined the entrance. The door mechanism looked complex, requiring multiple actions to open. Tom recognized patterns similar to the mathematical equations they'd found underwater. Working together, they solved the puzzle. Tom's understanding of mechanical systems combined with Blue's knowledge of Sin architecture helped them decipher the ancient locking mechanism. The door opened with a hiss of preserved air. Inside, they found a vast chamber filled with technology far beyond either of their species. At its center stood what was clearly an emergency beacon, but it was unlike anything they'd seen before. The controls were divided into 2 stations, clearly designed for different anatomies. Requires 2 species. Blue clicked excitedly. Ancient ones. New cooperation needed. The translator was working better in here, protected from the elements. They studied the controls, realizing the truth. The beacon needed both of them to activate it. Tom took the humanoid station, while Blue settled at the other. The controls responded to their touch, awakening after centuries of waiting. As they worked, holographic displays sprang to life around them, showing the planet's history. The ancient civilization had built this as a testament to cooperation, a beacon that could only be activated by different species working together. The signal went out, stronger than anything their emergency beacons could have produced. Within hours, they received a response. A rescue ship was coming. But there was a problem. The first ship could only safely carry one of them, due to its life support systems. Without hesitation, both insisted the other should go first. Tom pointed out Blue's diplomatic importance. Blue argued that Tom's survival skills were needed. In the end, they made a different choice. They would wait together. The beacon chamber was safe and well preserved. They had supplies, and more importantly, they had proved they could survive anything together. When the rescue ship arrived, its crew found them working to reactivate more of the ancient facility systems. Their story spread quickly through both their civilizations. A human and an insectoid alien, stranded on a deadly world, had not only survived but uncovered an ancient message about the power of cooperation. The facility became a joint research station, studied by both species. Years later, the site would become famous for something else. It was where the first formal alliance between humans and Blue's species was signed. The deadly planet that had tried to kill them had instead forged a bond between their peoples, proving that the greatest challenges could be overcome when different species worked together. Tom and Blue remained friends, their unique partnership becoming legendary among both their peoples. They had entered that adventure as stranded survivors, but emerged as pioneers of a new era of cooperation between species.